yeah, I mean, and it works. Like, I think that was probably the main aspect of my game. Like, there was definitely players who are way better than me theory wise, maybe even technically, definitely more technically.
Experience of what it was like, and I also am just interested in knowing like a bit about your journey, because you're not from Australia.
No,
and
so
I'm almost breaking rules by having you on the Australian poker mindset.
I'm pretty much Australian now. Like, I end sentences with A and say like weird sentences that I'd never used to say. I'm from the UK, from England. My girlfriend's Irish, so I followed her over about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Was here for a year, did farm work, went home for a bit, came back for the second year. And I don't want to use the word stuck because it's a great country to be in, but we have been essentially stuck here since, not being able to sort of break up our journey by going home to the UK for a bit to then come back.
So it's good to know that even like the best poker players who win the biggest tournaments are not immune from doing the farm work.
No, 100%. So like at the time I was doing farm work, I would still say like categorically I was playing for a living professionally, but it's a lot more difficult playing for a living in Australia than it is, specifically Sydney, than it is for when I was in the UK. In the UK, there'd be like a major event pretty much every week. There's a tour called the Grosvenor Poker Tour. So one of the major casino brands in the UK is a Grosvenor. And they have a tour where they pretty much have, I'm not sure the exact amount, but they have like about 20 casinos in the UK, and they go to 10 or 12 each year. And then the last event's like the grand final. So I used to play that every week. It's like a really good event, 250 runners for an £1,100 buy-in. It's like all the similar faces, so the camaraderie is really good. They have a live reporting team, live stream
every week.
They have like 12. I think they have 10 or 12 a year now.
Wow.
But then they also
once
have like
a month, I guess.
Yeah, so they have like one a month, and you have like 40 to 50 regs or pros that go play every event, and then every casino will satellite in like 40, 50, 60 players of their like smaller buy-ins, their 40, 50, 60 pound buy-in players, all satellite into 1100. So it's a great mix of sort of amateurs who are playing a really big tournament for themselves, and then it's obviously all the pros who play, and it's just a really good mixture. And that's how I kind of not got into poker, but that's how I sort of got known of people who knew who I was, because I won an event. And one of my first events, one of my first 1K events I won, which was in Luton, which is like essentially my hometown, where I beat a friend of mine heads up. So that was kind of the start of my full-on poker journey. But yeah, I didn't actually play poker for a living until I was 22, 23. I went to university, dropped out of university, but not for poker reasons. Wasn't like a poker dropout. I just wasn't enjoying the course. So I went to work for a tennis or a racket company. And I just played at weekends just for like fun. I had a lot of friends from school that we played with. And then I left that company and thought, I'll play poker for a couple of months. Wasn't ever intending to play for that for like 5 or 6 years. But every time I thought, all right, I'm going to get a proper job now, I would have another result, which would give me the freedom to continue to play for a living. And obviously, when you're single, which I was at the time, the flexibility, and I didn't have any worries in my life at that point. It's such a great experience when you're younger, like early 20s, be able to travel around the UK, travel around Europe, go to Vegas, and just play poker for a living. It's just like the best thing ever. But obviously, when you have more commitments, when you grow up, it becomes a lot more difficult, even if it is just accessibility reasons, financial reasons, which is why, especially in Australia, there's so many business people that play poker, and so not so many professionals that play poker.
Yeah. It was funny. Michelle and I were talking about that in our other episode, because the difference between the young player and the older player, and I know from the transition you're talking about, sounds like we're at similar stages, because when you're younger, in your early 20s, you don't have that mortgage to pay off, or the wife and the children and all. You don't have that, so you're more likely to take the risks and do the lifestyle, and it's all very glamorous and enticing, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, you can just travel. So like when I was younger, I used to obviously play this Grosvenor tour. I'd go to Marrakesh in Morocco. They used to have a close friend of mine. We went like once because we got advised by Barney Boatman, actually, who's a founder of the Hendon Mob. He was like, we were just chatting to him, and he was like, I'm going to Marrakesh in a couple of weeks. We're like, where are you going there for? And he was like, it's a poker series. We went there once, and it was just the best place ever. Like, we used to love it. So, and it was pretty untouched for the known European markets. There was hardly any like regulars there. Just a lot of very rich French and Moroccans. So it was really good, really well organised, really well run, really nice hotel that it was in. So I used to go there a lot. But I'd literally go from there for a week. Then I'd go to Scotland, and then I'd go to Vegas. And I lived at home with mum and dad, and they were like really supportive and really good. They helped me with the money aspect in terms of when I won a lot of money. They were really good at like So my mum would say, buy one item that's worth a bit of money, and then save the rest. Don't splash it all. Which is like, when I was 20, I think I was 22 or 23 when I won GK to Luton, I won like 65,000, which I got half of because I was backed at the time. And like having 35,000 at that age, you're like, oh my God, I have so much money.
How old were you then?
I think I was 23 or 22.
Yeah.
But I hadn't won that much in poker beforehand. It wasn't like I had a lot of close runs or anything. It was kind of like the first time I had a big run in a big comp and I just won it. So like, and then you kind of, like you just have all this money and you have like, I paid a bit of rent at home, but I didn't really have any expenses. And then you're like, oh, so I'll start traveling. But she was like, oh, you start lending money to people. Like you learn, obviously, when you get older, you learn that you need to be far more careful because obviously these things don't happen every week.
Plus the downswings. You're not experienced enough to know just how much variance is in this game.
No, 100%. I mean, I was very lucky when I was younger. So when I started playing, I played in Luton, I lived in between London and Luton, so London is obviously...
You're on the Australian podcast,
yeah,
right? So we need to understand where the hell's that. Can you describe it in Sydney, terms? Like,
so it's not actually dissimilar to... So the room I work in, the Poker Palace now, in Western Sydney to Sydney. So I currently live in Western Sydney, but it's like, it'd be half an hour to go to London, which would be Sydney, or 35 minutes to go to the Poker Palace, which would be Luton. Like, okay.
Where does Manchester fit in this? Because it says you're from Manchester on your Facebook.
Yeah, I don't know why I've tried to change that. It's like Manchester's like 3.5 hours from London. I don't know why it says I'm from Manchester. I've lived in London all my life.
Yeah, maybe it's because you've been in Australia for so long. You need people to understand. Like they're gonna be like, "Where's Luton? What's that?" It sounds made up. Yeah, but Manchester, we know Manchester United, Manchester City.
I was going to say all the football teams. Funny enough, when you're in England, or when I went to university up north, actually went to university like near Manchester in a place called Warrington. When they asked where I was from, I'd say London. But like, I'd never say where I was actually from, which is like an area called Pinner, because no one knows it. But now, like, you say, oh, I'm from the UK, and then you have to say England and then London. So it's like
the further away you get from your hometown, the more generalised it needs to be, right?
Yeah, and there's like so much between London and Manchester, and like people just obviously in Australia, obviously, why would you? But it's like the other side of the world. Like you don't know all the little towns in between, or not even the little towns, but cities in between.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, yeah, I'm from London. Like I don't want to be any more specific than that. But yes, I used to travel there. Mm-hmm. But I was really lucky that it was an older generation that I became very close to. And I had I was friends with a gentleman called Woody Tan who's got a World Series bracelet, for example. He's sort of 70s, 80s, been playing the game for like 50 years and gave me so much advice. So I'm like a 22, 23-year-old, but I wasn't reckless because I had these like wise heads who really like took me under their wing. I was friends with, I had respect for. So they taught me very early, like, obviously not to loan out this money, not to go ridiculous and start playing. I just won like 30k, not to start firing money away into bigger buying tournaments just because I won one tournament.
But you did it anyway, right?
I didn't actually. Not the loaning money did originally maybe to too wide an audience. Nowadays it's just for a very, very close knit group of friends I would do it to. But in terms of the firing tournaments, I've actually never done that. Like I see other people do it and I'm like, I always think, like good luck to them. Like if they're on a good run, like fair enough. But 30,000 doesn't last any time if you start firing EPTs, like the 5Ks and whatever or the 2.5Ks and 5Ks every week. It doesn't last you at all. And I never ever did that. Like I went to Vegas 2 years in a row and I was very careful like what I scheduled to play. And I've never really wanted all that glory of winning a huge event. Like the Grosvenor events are so good that I probably don't need, like they are so good anyway. So it's not like I'm hungry to play bigger buying comps because they are big buying comps and they're also really well run. So I've never had like, which is what a lot of young people who win money suddenly go chasing like huge like $1 million scores or £1 million scores, and that's where suddenly like the money just disappeared.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'll happily own up to being one of those when I was younger, man. I had a similar story to you because like I won 50k when I was 18, and it took me like 3 months to burn through that.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't,
I didn't have anyone good around me like you described who was helping me with this sort of stuff, and I kind of just, who really knew poker and also really knew money. I didn't really have that until only really in the last couple of years. So, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I had a lot of friends outside of poker, but also played poker, so I see them. And obviously, my mum and dad were super supportive. Like, she would like not take the money off me because that sounds, but I would like give her some money to like put away at that time when I was like 22, 23. This was before like the crypto investments and stuff were a thing. So I was just like, I'll keep it. I put it into like banks and whatever. But yeah, she was really supportive and sort of helped me be quite wise in my money. Because originally I just played tournaments for a living. So if you do play cash games, it can, and tournaments, obviously you can do the money a lot quicker because you jump in a really big cash game, which is still really reckless because the two formats are very different.
Yeah, there's less variance in the cash game, I would imagine, right? Because in the tournaments, obviously, simply put, 1 in 10 are getting paid or something like that,
but
right?
I was going to say, but in the cash games, because it's sort of uncapped on how much you can do, I can never do more than 2K at this time because they're a single re-entry. But in a cash game, if you suddenly jump in a big cash game, you've had a big score, you can easily do 5 to 10,000 of a 30. If you get involved, you're involved, kind of thing. But I was lucky; I never really played cash games. I've still never played big cash games to this day.
So you call yourself a tournament player?
Yeah, I was a live tournament player in the UK. So yeah, as I was saying, so I won this Luton event, and then I just kind of never looked back. And every time, like, I think enjoying poker is so important. So like, if you obviously it is a job, like, and you have to take it seriously as a job. And again, I was lucky; I had a friend called Guy who's very much takes it very seriously as a job. And I used to travel and went to Vegas with him, and we sort of bounce off each other really well. So I was always really responsible in that regard. But like, you have to treat it like a job. So like, you have to turn up prepared every day. But I think if you enjoy it, it makes the game not easy is not the right word, but I think you'll have more success if you enjoy it because you interact with people. And when you interact with people, they seem to play more honestly with you. Like, if someone doesn't like you, they're far more likely to try and outplay you, bluff you. Whereas if you've been chatting to someone for a few hours, they're far more honest with you, like, on the whole. Some people obviously don't change at all, but a lot of people are, if they don't play for a living, are, oh, he's a really nice guy, I've been chatting to him. Like, they kind of don't want to lose you from the table because you're like creating conversation and they're enjoying it.
There's a bit of a psychological game that's happening there, right? But I like what you're talking about here. So I'm trying to understand it. So there's a bit of a, if I be friendly to people and if I embrace the whole competition and people and just be a nice person and all that, there's a part of that is part of the psychological foreplay, isn't it? Right?
For sure.
And it's like, you can take my blinds, Will. Thanks.
No, 100%.
No worries. I'll let you have it this time.
When I was younger, someone once said to me, and I've never forgot it, always make really good friends with the people sat either side of you because, like, a lot of the time there's a lot of stuff that goes on the button blinds or whatever, and they're the people that you're probably going to be playing the most pots with on average. It might not always occur like that, but on average. So if you make good friends with when you're in the small blind with the big blind, or vice versa when someone's in the small blind and you're in the big blind, make friends with them. They play so much more honestly. They give you so many more walks. You can steal their blinds and just pretend you had a good hand, and occasionally show them a really good hand when you have one. And I just and it works. Like, I think that was probably the main aspect of my game. Like, there was definitely players who are way better than me theory-wise, maybe even technically, definitely more technically. But I just had I was really good at chatting to people, making sure people like enjoyed my company, but also, as you said, it's like psychological. Like, I would chat to them and I wasn't doing it like manipulatively, but I was kind of like chatting to them nicely. And then obviously when we're in a pot and I talk to them in a pot, hoping that like they don't lie to me as such, and they like, because I've been chatting to them, like they can tell the truth. And I know Negrano touches on this all the time. Like you ask someone a question and hope they tell the truth and lie, and you can tell the difference in when they do the lie and the truth.
Yeah.
So kind of on a much more simplified version of that was kind of what I was going for.
Well, what I love about this for you is that, I mean, I don't know you well. I mean, we only had a couple of chats on a game out in Western Sydney, but from what I've seen of you in the poker community here, and even just looking at your Facebook and seeing some of the comments after you won, I mean, you replied to, I'm pretty sure, like every one of the people who congratulated you, and everyone I've talked to has had nothing but good things to say about you. So the fact that it's organic is one thing that I think is amazing, and really, it's a quality that I look up to, because yes, poker's a game and you do need to use strategies. Often they're fundamental, but a lot of it is psychological as well. And at the end of the day, when you're on a poker table, it's anyone's game, but it's a card game.
Yeah,
but
100%.
What I like is that it's genuine for you. You know, you're not.
Yeah, I've just always enjoyed like meeting new people and talking to new people. So like when I first played poker, obviously, because I used to play at school in like 16, 17, the classic stories are like penny home games kind of thing. And it was a lot of chat, a lot of back and forth banter. And then I just played, just because I played for fun. It wasn't like it was that serious to me. I really enjoyed the game, and I just like enjoyed the social aspect of it. So it kind of, as you said, it came naturally. So it wasn't like I was trying to manipulate these people. But you have so many, like you get on so well with so many people, you end up having quite a few friends in poker. But from my side of thing, which might sound slightly savage, I've never had an issue of like, I could be really close to someone and I have no issue like taking their chips if you like. But some people are a bit more apprehensive, like, oh, he's a nice guy, I don't want to bluff him. But I kind of just like, it's the game. So as soon as the hand starts, it's like hand versus hand. I'm not like nothing personal, but it's just hand versus hand. Whereas some people struggle with that, and like they'll be like they're friends with someone, and then they struggle to play their hand as organically as they should do because they've got that friendship in the back of their mind. But I've never really struggled with that, because as soon as the cards are dealt, like everyone's in opposition. Like,
How do you do that though, right? Because I have had people who I've worked with who say things like, I don't know what to do when I'm in a big tournament against someone I know or someone I'm close with or someone I've shared accommodation with on the tour or whatever. But we're playing for some serious money here, and like you won a big tournament as a result of probably using some of these strategies, subconsciously along the way. But for someone who's listening and is thinking, yeah, like I'd love to know how to do that. Like how do you do that?
Like I'd say, I wouldn't say it's 100% like natural, because, so for example, a friend of mine, Luke Canna, went deep in that WPT as well. We've made the final 2 tables, and like we played a lot together and we get on really well. So I wouldn't be like going out of my way to bluff him, if you know what I mean. Like I'm going to play my hand normally against him, and if I have a good hand, I'm going to play my hand properly. But like there's spots that are marginal about should I bluff or shouldn't I bluff. There's obviously the air, like you probably side more on the non-bluff because I know this person. But outside of that, you just play your hand completely normally. But I think, as you said, it is a game. Everyone on the table is opposition, so you kind of just, it's never personal. I know some people do take it personally, or like a comment here or there, but it is just a game. Like you have to think they would do the same to you. So you just have to like just play your hand, play the player, but you just have to, like, it's a game. That's what you turn up to play. There's only 5 to 8 other people on the table, and to win money and win chips, you have to take chips off them. So you kind of just put it behind you. Like I could chat to someone, win a huge pot of someone, or lose a huge pot, and then just chat to them after. I just don't know. I don't know if that's a common thing, but I've just never really affected me. Like a friend of mine could beat me in a really big pot, and it would make no difference to me talking to him immediately after the pot. Like I might pest him saying, "Oh, what did you have? How did you bluff me?" for like a laugh, but it wouldn't affect me going, "Oh, I can't believe you did that. We're supposed to be friends." I've just never had that outlook on poker. I don't know if
there's some sort of thing that I feel like is happening that's, when I say organically, I mean like something to do with your upbringing has conditioned you to not be emotionally reactive with this stuff, because like you said, some people take it personally, and often we take it personally because we have a chip on our shoulder in certain situations for certain things. And poker, because it's competitive, it triggers that for a lot of people. So if one person does bluff them or is consistently raising their blinds or whatever it might be, they do start to create this, it's, you're coming after me. Or even when people like bad beat you, it's like they didn't even choose to bad beat you, but for some reason there's a personal, you did this to me, right? Like,
and I think it's a really big issue. So like one of the biggest differences between I find it quite funny, but the differences between Sydney and say the UK is the sort of the blame on the dealer, if you like. So because people like don't want to blame themselves, which I can understand, but they'll have a dealer that's unlucky for them, or they can never beat another player, and I think that's a huge like mental block, because then you're thinking about the dealer who's dealing to you rather than thinking about what you're doing in the hand. But yeah, just touching on what you're saying, like I've always been super competitive. Like if you ask my mum or dad, like I used to like, cheat's probably the correct word, in like games when I was younger, like a really young child, like playing card games, I put 2 down at once or whatever. And this goes like as far as like my grandma was 98 this week. Played card games with her. She's like loves
98
card games.
this week?
Yeah, she was 98 this week. But I played card games with her. She's in the home now, so me and my mum used to go every week, and we played card games. And she'd like make a mistake, and like I would put her up on the mistake. Like, like you should just like, she's 98, she's my grandma, I should just like let her win. I just can't do it. I'm like, you can't put 2 cards down at once, or you have to pick up the whole deck if you do that, like that kind of thing. And I'm just like that competitive streak.
I can imagine her sleight of hand wouldn't be as good these days either.
But she laughs about it afterwards. So I'm pretty sure she still tries. So like, but like even in that regard, like I just a competitive edge in me. Like when I was playing games when I was younger, I used to like have a strop if I lost kind of thing. Like I'm just very competitive. I played a lot of football when I was younger, or soccer. I played a lot of when I was in the UK and England. Just really competitive. I hate losing. I'm a sore loser, but in poker, because you lose so often, I can't like. Don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect. A couple of times I've had a blow up for like 10 minutes on the phone to somebody going, I cannot believe this happened. Like, what is this person doing? But then after 10, 15 minutes, like, it's gone. Like, next one, or let's go for food or whatever. But I think that's one of the biggest mental blocks is people who go, I never beat you. Remember that hand you beat me? And like another strength of mine when I played poker is I can remember hands I played against someone 4 years ago, and little like tells or whatever they did, or the way they played a certain hand 4 years ago, and I will like put that into my thinking when I'm thinking about a decision. But I never think, he got lucky, or like obviously some people obviously going to over time because of the game are going to get luckier against you than others. But I think it's a big mental block to think, this dealer's unlucky for me, or like I never win against this player, I never win with this hand. Then it just like if you start thinking that, you've already like lost some of your edge and your percentage chance of winning the hand because you're not thinking clearly about what you're about to do.
Right. And so, is there any part of this? I'm thinking pragmatically here. Is there any part of your support that you got in the early 20s? You said from the older guys around you that's helped you manage this as well, because to be able to prevent yourself from reacting, like you're saying that, oh look, it was always kind of okay for me to not react, or maybe I'll just vent for 10 minutes on the phone, but it didn't affect my game. I know from firsthand with people I work with who share some intimate things that it actually is very difficult for them to do that because of that emotional trigger. Like, did they teach you anything like meditation or visualize, writing things down? Like,
so I've always written hands down. So like, even if I got like, if I lost a big hand or I played a hand badly, like a lot of people, I think the only time I've ever been annoyed busting a tournament is when I've played a hand badly or made a mistake. Because I played so much poker, I understand you're going to lose these inevitable situations, like these flips, these ace, king, first, queens. You're going to lose these like hands. And if it was the other way around, you'd lose it or you'd win it, kind of thing. So the only times I ever got annoyed is if I played a hand really badly and essentially punted it off, or I struggled more with people doing things that I would never do. So I could never I'm never going to get that situation back, if you know what I mean. If someone makes a ridiculous call, like with a ridiculous hand that I would never call with because I think it's incorrect, I'm never going to, unlike a flip, I'm never going to recreate that situation and get that variance or that luck back, if you know what I mean. So that would frustrate me. But as I said, after 10 or 15 minutes, I'd be like, no, I mean, that's why I play the game, because I want people to be doing this. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. I know a lot of people struggle with it. Obviously, I work in a poker palace in the Marconi now. I work on the cash desk on the floor. So I see when people bust, I see their reactions, and it can be incredibly difficult. Like, I know from going on downswings how difficult it can be. Like, when you go on a downswing, like, you kind of have to become unattached to the game, like just not care at all. Like, just play poker and not care if you win or lose, because like, I really enjoy playing, but as soon as you care too much, you've kind of lost already, because if you let emotion get in the way, you're kind of lost already because you're not thinking clearly. And
you're literally using a different part of your brain.
Yeah. Like, people say to me, do you not care? Like, I'll just lose. What can I do? There's nothing I can do. It's like the next one. Like, but people do care because they really enjoy it and it's a hobby. So I completely understand the other side of it. But just for me, I've always been pretty flat. Like, emotionally, I don't have like huge highs or huge lows. So I guess that's always helped. Like, I'm not a hugely emotional person. I guess that's always just helped me in poker. But like, I can fully understand. Like, don't get me wrong, there's been moments I've just like been so infuriated by what's happened. But then, as I say, like 10, 15, half an hour max later, I'm just like, yeah, should we go and get something to eat? Like next one kind of thing.
So what do you actually do? Do you just get up and, like, if you're really, really triggered by something, do you just get up and make a phone call and just kind of like chat with someone to get it off your chest? Or do you ever leave the table and miss hands, or is there anything like that?
No, poker was always like, getaway is the wrong word, but when I play poker, I've never ever really thought about anything else going on. So like, I play poker, I sit at the table, like I socialize with these people, but nothing's ever affected me in like the back of my mind. Likewise, like, I've pretty much always been backed when I play poker because I play tournaments for a living and the variance is huge. And I've never really had like financial worries in the back of my head when I play either. So like there's definitely more pressure when you play for a living than when you just play for fun, when you make a big final table, because obviously the money is obviously way more important because it's what you do for a living and it is your income. But I've kind of, I guess, because I'm kind of emotionally very flat, like the money aspect's never really like, don't get me wrong, I get excited when I play bigger buy in tournaments, but when I make the final table, I'm still very like level-headed and relaxed about it. I think maybe just because I played so much, so many tournaments, I'm kind of just used to it maybe.
Yeah. I think that could be it. I think what I've found is that when you, like, if we're talking about, say, something like anxiety, which is what poker can produce for a lot of people because there's so much unknown, right? Anxiety is a fear of the future. And when there's so much unknown going on and so many variables, like your heart rate rises. Even when you get a good hand, you get dealt pocket aces, your heart rate starts increasing because you know you're going to be in a big pot. And we all know you don't always win with aces, right? So I think that one of the things that's really helped me personally over the years is the more and more you actually know what you're doing with what you have control over, which is your strategy with using your chips, like stack sizes, bet sizes, all that, the more you know that you're comfortable with what you're doing is right in terms of a fundamental strategy, the less likely you are to have the anxiety, because you're able to go, oh, you know what? I've been doing everything I can to make my fundamentals good and my mind good, and the rest is just part of the game. Yeah. Actually, it's part of the excitement rather than the fear of the anxiety. It's exciting, right? Like, it's hard to differentiate the two at like anxiousness or excitement, right?
Yeah, 100%. It is an exciting game because anything with luck involved, which is why people who gamble outside or people gamble then end up going into poker or the other way, just because poker is essentially like the gamble part of poker is obviously the all-ins and that kind of side of it. So that still gives people the thrill. Or like some people get a thrill from running a big bluff and showing it. But most people's thrill is like winning a big all-in, like the thrill of like watching the board, like the heart rate obviously goes up on the turn and the river, like the anxiety of, as you said, there's probably anxiety also. It's like, don't let them hit. But there's also the excitement, like, oh, I'm going to win a big pot. So yeah, 100%. It's like very difficult to differentiate between the two.
What's the biggest thrill for you?
What's the biggest? Like, I still get like, I get very excited playing like larger main events. So like, I really enjoy like the World Series circuit event in Sydney, like obviously the WPT main, those kind of things. Like, I just really enjoy them. Like, they're good structures. There's a lot of people playing. Like, obviously the prize money's big, and it's just like the whole atmosphere around it. Like, there's a buzz around it. So I've played the main event in Vegas a couple of times, and like the first time I played it, I've never been so nervous playing a poker tournament. Like, butterflies are going. I sit down. I late regged, and I sat down, and there was like 3 people on my table from the 100k that obviously don't know me, but I know them, and I'm like, oh, this like I lost like 15k of a 50k stack in the first hand, and like the anxiety, I was like so nervous. Like,
who are they? Who are the people in the 100K?
So Brandon Adams was on my table.
Oof, yeah.
Niall Farrell and someone else. I can't remember. But like, I'd played with big names before. Like, I played with like Sergio Ida and Adrian Mateos, the 2 really good Spanish players in like the grand final in the UK.
Yeah.
But this was just like, it's just different. Like the buzz, you just hear all the chips riffling around. Like it's everything you've seen as a kid. And it was also obviously always a dream of mine when I started playing Pokemon. Like you watch it like every year on ESPN.
Yeah.
So like I got like that was a real buzz. Like I was anxious and nervous, but it was such a buzz to be like sitting down and like seeing the World Series at like chips. And it's just so like the first time you ever play it, it's like nothing else. Like there really isn't a tournament like it. The second year, like I was completely flat. I was like, oh, here we go again. Because I made day 3 the first year. And the second year I made day 3 again and didn't cash it either and played like 30 hours both years and not cash. And I was like, oh, here we go again. Yeah. But the first time, like, yeah, I mean, just the big buy-in tournaments are always a buzz. Like, I don't play that many anymore.
I remember seeing a tweet by, I think it was Christian Harder, that said like the main event for professional poker players is a draw.
Yeah. Oh, so like my favorite place to play poker in the world is the Wynn in Vegas. I just absolutely love it.
It's
I
nice
used to stay in the Encore sometimes like for the last couple of weeks of the series. I just love it. Like just even like going down to like the smell of it. Like just love the smell of the Wynn. Like it's just my favorite.
You're making me want to go to Vegas, man. Yeah. And it's all happening right
it's
now. I'm already like wishing I was there.
There's a lot of Australians there at the moment. I've just travelled over, but yeah, I mean I just love the Wynn. Funny enough, like anytime there was a good comp on at the Wynn, I'd also get excited and like I'd always look forward to playing at the Wynn. But the Rio, like. I mean, if we're going to be real, the Rio's a horrible place to play poker. It's cold, it's dirty, the chips are dirty. Like, it's just not a great place to play poker. Like, it's not particularly great, a nice hotel, but because it has the World Series, you can't not go.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't imagine a World Series not in those pavilions because I've been like 7 or 8 times now, and like it's always been in those huge Rio pavilions. There's 3 of them. But yeah, I can't imagine World Series if they held it anywhere else.
Yeah, I think next year they might do it apparently, but yeah, I mean it's. Yeah, I mean, I love Vegas. Like, obviously, so the second year I went, my partner came out. I went for the whole 8 weeks, and my partner came out after 5 or 6 weeks. And I'd never really been to Vegas and not played poker. So the first time I ever went was for my best friend's stag do. So it was actually like the best thing that could happen to me.
Bucks party.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Just
Bucks
party.
Sorry.
We're not the UK poker mindset. We're the Australian.
I missed that one. Sorry. Someone said that.
Don't worry. That's
day.
why I'm here.
I went to Vegas for a stag do for like a week, and we literally went for 2 or 3 days. All we did was like walk up one end of the street, go to check every casino and go to a bar in every casino and then walk back down. So like, it's like the first time you go, like you don't know anything. You've seen it all, but you don't know anything. So like, we've been to every place. I knew which restaurants I wanted to go to. I knew which places were nice to play poker, where the nice bars were, etc. So when I went back to play poker, I've always been quite a hard worker playing poker. I just played poker non-stop. But when my partner came out, we did 2 weeks. I didn't gamble once, like or play poker once, and just loved it. Like saw like a completely different side to Vegas. Like we went to the sign, we went to the pawn shop that's on television.
Oh yeah, I did that too. Yeah,
we did all these different things that I just like because when you get so indulged when you're playing poker in Vegas, like I have to play another tournament, which is probably a mistake on my part. Like I play 3 tournaments a day when really I should just take the afternoon off and go to a show or something. But yeah, we went to shows and it's just like a completely different side of Vegas. So now when I'm excited to go back, I'm like probably equally as excited to go back to play poker than I am to do all the other stuff. Like,
Do you think the pandemic has done that a bit to you as well? Because we haven't been able to have that, it's not like you've chosen not to go. It's like, no, you haven't had that, and we don't know when you can have that again. So if you do get it again, like to be able to travel anywhere, or especially Vegas, it's like, wow, I really want to make the most of it. Because last time I went, it was like I just spent too much time playing cards, and you don't really remember the swings and all that, but you will remember if you played too much, or if you'll remember the good memories if you did cool things. Like now you're sharing, like, the first time you went, or the first 2 weeks was so cool for you. Like,
but yeah, when I went for the 8 weeks, I probably enjoyed the 2 weeks with my partner more than I did the poker part. Like, I didn't do too badly in the poker. It wasn't like I had a huge downswing. Like, I had one score of like 20k, which kind of nearly saved me. But like, it wasn't like I lost a lot, but just playing day after day, busting like level 12, 13, 14 of every tournament.
yeah.
It's like, oh, this is so nice. We're going to a show tonight. We're going to
What's your favorite thing to do in Vegas?
There's
One thing.
the Ruth and Chris Steakhouse in Harrah's is so good. Like, I might have been there I love it. 4 or 5 times I've been there. I love eating at nice restaurants. So like, I've been there. The Stratosphere, the spinning restaurant at the top's really nice.
Did you go on any of the rides up there?
No, I hate rides. It's bad because my girlfriend loves.
You love
that.
the excitement of poker. Surely you'd love the thrill of a ride.
My partner Lauren loves rides, and there's like one at the top of the Stratosphere, and she's like looking at me. I'm thinking, surely she's not going to think. And it's like drops off the edge. And I'm thinking, she's obviously like knows I'm not going on this. Like,
did she make you go on it?
No, she didn't.
Did she go on it?
No, she didn't either. But like, so she's always wanted to go to Florida to the resort, Disney World. But I kind of wouldn't be any good there because I really don't like roller coasters, and I could do the simulated rides probably, but I'm just not good at rides. I've like never liked them when I was a kid, and I've never been forced to go on them since. Maybe like
it's all right. You guys can just go to Florida. You can go to the Hard Rock, go play the tournaments, and she can go to Disney World in Orlando.
100%. I'll get her the quick pass so you don't have to queue. But yeah,
get her a full week. Like you'll be playing 30 hours or 25 hours a day or something, whatever.
But yeah, I mean, I've never done the rides aspect of Vegas. Obviously, there's a couple of theme parks, but yeah, the shopping center, the Cheesecake Factory. I just love eating. So just all these nice restaurants we go to. We went to Le Rev, the underwater show at the Wynn, which was incredible.
Yeah,
like,
that's cool.
And
that's a Cirque du Soleil, isn't it?
Yeah, the Cirque du Soleil shows in general in Vegas are just incredible. Like the buffets.
Oh
God. Now I'm thinking about the food.
No, we've got to stop, man. We've got to stop. This is making me too jealous. Let's bring it back in.
This is why I'm fine busting a poker tournament, because there's all these options to go to. I'm fine. I'll go and eat.
I think that's great, though, because, when you do have that mentality of... I think this comes out in the carelessness you were talking about before, because, well, you know what? Like, at the end of the day, there's more to life than poker. So if you go and you want to play lots of poker, that's great, but also know that there's more to life. So if you get out and you get unlucky, then have a plan and go and do something fun, or have things in place, which is hard for people because they assume as soon as they buy in, they're going to be in it till the end. For some reason, there's something in our mind that thinks, when I enter, I'm going to win. And if I don't, I'll be upset. But you don't think that, well, the reality is you're probably going to bust pretty early. So have a plan that can be easily changed,
No, 100%. I think playing poker for a living when you're younger is, like, as I said, for the freedom is the best thing ever. But it's not easy. Like, and I know a lot of people will get into it. Like, they play online, which obviously a bit different. But like, the playing live poker for a living is definitely not easy. So like, towards the end of me, like 4 or 5 years in, I found it really difficult. Like, I was playing a lot, traveling a lot. I was on a downswing. But like, I was just like mentally, it's just you find it lonely. Like, if you're not. Which is why I know so many poker players, like, they go out drinking or whatever, because obviously busting a tournament is always disappointment. Like, even if you don't care, there's obviously a tad of disappointment. You're like, oh, I'm out, kind of thing. So it always be like, I'm never like not disappointed that I busted a tournament, but I wouldn't like care that much. But it's obviously a bit of disappointment, and then it's just like, as you said, if you don't have any plans afterwards, it can be a really lonely existence. Like, you're in these different countries, and it can be really tricky. And also, if you play for a living, you kind of have to have friends in poker because. And for a social aspect, because when I was playing live for a living, I'd get up at like 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon after getting in at 4, 5, or 6 from a cash game. All my like school friends are working, so it's like the access to see them and go and do things with them. When I have to go, like, if there's a really good customer in town, I have to go and play cash every night, or if there's a tournament on, I'm traveling and I need to get some sleep. So it's like a very difficult, like, which people, I think, like, there's obviously the glory aspect of it because I see people who do really well, but there's a lot of people who don't do really well, and it is a huge struggle, like, emotionally and physically, and obviously like socially, because it's very difficult to see non-poker friends when you play poker for a living, especially live. Like, you can have a day off playing online, but if there's a good cash game that's running all week, or there's a tournament series, you can't miss it. Like, it's what you do for a living. You have to go. So it's just very difficult to keep up those friendships. Like, I'm lucky a lot of my friends are interested in poker, but so it's just very difficult to keep up, and it can get a very lonely existence. Like, I struggled with it for like 2 or 3 months before I met Lauren. It's just very difficult. Like, I'd be traveling with a friend, they'd still be in the tournament. You're like, I'm just sat in this hotel room going, what am I doing here? Like,
This is why I think a lot of people are very susceptible to, addiction behaviors outside of poker, whether it be gambling, drugs, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as they say.
No, 100%. And I've never done drugs. I'm not a huge drinker. I'm not a huge partier. So, like, as I said, I didn't like binge food. I just go out for food. But like, sometimes you're going out for dinner on your own. You're like, it's tricky. Like,
It's not the same.
no, it's not the same. Like, people don't. That's kind of where the mental aspect comes into poker. Is like, as you say, like dealing with like the loss or like, which I did pretty well. But still, it's a struggle when you're on a downswing. It's like a very lonely existence. Like, it's just like it's an individual sport, or we want to call it a sport. It's an individual sport. So you've really only got, it's all on you to try and, get out of this financial hole you're in and try and earn a living. So it can be very difficult.
And this is where I think coming back to what we're talking about being friendly with people at the table, it's like, well, if you're going to be touring around with a lot of those people, I mean, it might be nice to be friendly with them because then you can hang out with them after the game. And
100%. And that's why, like, I used to love playing in the UK. Like, I never really had any issues when I played in the UK. It's when I started traveling to like play in various other countries, it can get very difficult. I had a very good friend that I traveled with, and we got bounced off each other really well. So that obviously worked really well, but it still can be. I think that's where a lot of people sort of trip up. Is they do well in their country of residence, and then they go and play. It's a lot different playing in a different country with a different language and different people.
Are you saying that Australia is a different language to you?
I know, not including Australia. Australia is a very good place to play poker.
What do you love about it? What do you love about Australia so much and the poker here?
Obviously, now working in the Poker Palace, like. Another benefit to what I now do is obviously I work in the Poker Palace full time. So my partner Lauren is the manager there now, and I work as sort of 2 AD. So we're open like 3 or 4 days a week, and then so obviously that is my major income, and then I play poker just for fun now. So that's like a really nice. I can just pick and choose when I play. There's no pressure to play, and I'm just playing for enjoyment because I want to play and I enjoy the game. But obviously working in the room, you meet so many different people, and I'd say the biggest difference between Sydney, I can only really speak about Sydney where we sort of run. But Sydney and London is just the amount of, because there's no online poker in Australia, there's not many professional poker players whose major income is or main income is poker. There's a lot of people in Sydney that play a lot of poker but also have a business.
Yeah.
And just meeting these businessmen, like obviously in our room we have some of the most successful businessmen in Sydney that come and play. And part of the reason our room does so well is because, I've just turned 30, my partner's 26, like we're obviously younger than they are. They pass on so much information and wisdom to us, and we always listen. And they have so many ideas. Obviously, because they have these business backgrounds, like obviously we're going to listen to these people who are hugely successful. But yeah, I mean, the biggest difference is, getting off point, is that there's way more business guys or business men and women that play poker in Sydney than there is in London. Like London, if you played a 1K, you'd be like 80% professionals and 20% like hobby players. Whereas in Sydney, I'd say it's like 20% max professionals and 80%. So they just enjoy the game a lot more. They're there for fun. Some of them are literally just there for the competition rather than financial. Like the money is not as relevant to them. They just want the competition and to play against the better players, the best players.
So there's a vibe here that is a bit more like inclusive of the love of the game rather than just everyone's there to try and like capitalize off their situations and make money.
You hardly ever see anyone, like especially in our room in the poker palace, very rarely people wear headphones, for example. Whereas in Vegas and London, whatever, there's a lot of headphone wearers. Like just like people that play online, turn up to play this live comp. And don't interact. Like a lot of people I've spoken to have asked for advice in my time. I'd be like, just socialize at the table, get to know these people. And like, as I said to you, get to know people either side of you. It makes a huge difference. And one of my friends who's a lot better poker player than I am technically was like, as soon as he learned this, his results just shot up because like these spots where like he used to like be very stubborn at the table and like a bit moody. And I said, just be nice at the table, People will like you more, they'll bluff you less, and like just interact with them. And his like results of like just, obviously there's a luck aspect where they've just shot up. But yeah, Sydney's like a lot of chatting at the table. Even just the actual technical aspect of playing in poker in Sydney, you go like 5 ways to pots all the time in Sydney. Like I'd never played a 5-way pot until I got to Australia, like ever. I was like reporting these hands to my friends back home. They're like, this is not a real hand. I was like, I'm telling you, it's a real hand. Like, because people are just here to gamble and have fun. It's like, yeah, it's just like the atmosphere is obviously a lot better. And it's just because it's the business guys. They're not there to like like work you out. They just want to enjoy themselves and play.
Yeah.
Play that they've worked hard all week or whatever.
But I still find that, like, because, like, you know, I agree, and I totally understand what you're talking about with the culture of, like, people treating it more like a hobby rather than a business, because they've got their own businesses, right? But what I found is, because they are successful in their businesses, or a lot of them were successful in other ventures in their life, they still do have quite a competitive nature, but
100%.
there is still such a huge social hobby aspect about it that they bring, right?
100%.
So it's still a tough challenge.
So I know you had
but
Michelle on last week. He's like a prime example. Like, he plays. Like, I don't think he plays for a living, as far as I know. But
No,
he's got
no.
businesses. But he's like very strong, and like to do well in business, you have to learn and adapt. Obviously, not that I know this just from listening to others, but you have to learn and adapt. And these people, they're not stupid. Like, they're going to spend their money. They're not that they're bothered about the money that much, but they're going to want to see like a return on it. So they always strive to improve. They pick up on things. They're not there just to like give money away and have fun. Like, these are business guys that are very, very intelligent, and they learn very quickly. So like himself, Spano, the Eastern Suburbs crew, they do very well in poker because they learn very quickly. They're very shrewd, like, and they pick up on things at the table. So yeah, they're there to have fun, and like the money might not be that important to them, but they're still very competitive, as you say, like, because you have
and
to be to
their
get to the top.
willingness to learn is pretty impressive. I found, you know, I've worked with most of the people I work with are over 50 because they've just, you know, they've set up their businesses and their family sort of thing, and they just do it as a hobby because it's not physically draining like other sports may be. And you know, even I have one guy I've been really close with over the years, Martin Ward. He's just started the Australian Poker School in Brisbane, so he's decked out a whole room with tables, and like, you know, he's got one of the RFID tables from Tom Bauer, and his whole view is to turn that into some sort of like cool, enjoyable environment where everyone can learn. And I think it's just great. But he's been the CEO of a car company for many years, and he, you know, but he loves the aspect, the learning aspect of the game, the challenge of it and everything. So yeah, I mean, it's just so impressive, I think. But it does create a good combination of competitiveness, socialness, fun, excitement, but then, yeah, I don't know, like it's good.
I think
it?
also it's not like saying that there's more businessmen that play in Sydney by no means it's easier, because then they pick up on things that the online professionals or whatever don't pick up on, because they're not used to like the environment or socializing with people, so they'll miss things that and won't make changes that these businessmen will, because they pick up on these things. They react very quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not by no means by them not being professionals it make it any easier. They're still like very good at what they do. But yeah, it's just the social aspect. They don't put their headphones in, and, you know, I mean, sometimes they do. They just want to zone out and relax. But like most of the time, especially in our room, there's a lot of chatting, a lot of conversation, a lot of like laughing back and forth, and people like just come for the enjoyment aspect as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a very different environment playing in Sydney.
I love what's going on at the Poker Palace. Tell us a little bit about that, because we also want to talk a bit about your WPT stuff. I'll get a few upset listeners if we don't talk about WPT. But tell us what's happening in the Poker Palace at the moment. I love the room out there. It's too far for me and too late. I'm a young.
That's the classic excuse we get all the time. So I actually originally, when I came over to Australia, I was just playing in the room. My partner Lauren, who's now the manager, has been under new ownership for the last 2 years. Rob Menendez is the new owner, and he's really good. He's a businessman. He has a couple of businesses. And he just lets me and Lauren get on with it. We fire ideas off him, and he's very involved. I mean, he's more than happy to. I mean, we chat. Him and Lauren chat daily about ideas and future events and stuff. But he just trusts us, and we just get on with it and sort of do the best we can. But so, for example, on Sunday we had an 1100 monthly, which we got 104 runners for, which is just incredible in Western Sydney on a random Sunday.
It's just after lockdown too. Yeah. I mean, you know, like, it's great.
And funny enough, lockdown is good and bad. Obviously, we have to be closed, but after lockdown, people seem to have money. So the first lockdown, we had our biggest ever series. So we run 4 series a year, 2 weeks each series, and the first week is like a smaller. We have like a mini main, which is 550, and then the second week we have a 2.5k high roller, which I personally think is the best event in Sydney of the year. We now have a super high roller of 5k, and then we have the 1150 main. So the second week's like the high roller week. And that's been going on. So we built from the previous owner, who did a great job. We've just built from that and that database. But yeah, the one issue is, as you pointed out, as you said, as what I was going to say, people say, it's just too far. So it's just very difficult to get the central Sydney people to travel out, because especially when the Stars open. When it's closed, they're obviously more susceptible because they want to play poker. But there isn't a huge amount of choice. So we run like the biggest buy-ins in Sydney. It's a fully dealt room. So if you want to play big blinds in Sydney, there's the only option really is a Poker Palace. I know Natan at Kings now runs 200s a week and is running a couple of 550s over the next couple of months. But we run like a 550 every Sunday. We now run a 1K once a month, but it might be more often after we got 104 on Sunday. And then we actually have a brand new concept and idea coming up on the 17th, so 2 weeks' time. We're running a 40-40. So $440 buy-in, 40K guaranteed, 40-minute clock. And it's going to be the first guaranteed tournament since we've been back. So what a lot of the rooms have done...
Is this like a real guarantee or one with the
So I was
asterisk?
just going to say, so a lot, because of it's so unpredictable with COVID, there's been a lot of... I mean, our series have been like 800K estimated.
Yeah.
We've made over $1 million in both, which is really good for, obviously, the room where we are. But they had to be estimates because, obviously, because of COVID restrictions, and it can be tricky to guess. And it's a bit... I mean, as I say, it's reckless just chucking $1 million guarantee on when some people can't travel into Sydney. But this is the first actual guarantee we're having back, so it's 40K guaranteed, a 2-day event. So we have a lot of bookings already, so we're hoping that'll be really good. And then we have our series coming up. We have a Christmas Cup coming up in December the 5th. But yeah, and we also, because of the room, like we end up becoming very close to a lot of our players just because of where the room is, how often they come to the room. And part of our job, and mine and Lauren's job, is to listen to the players of what they want. So we have a Friday 350. So before the last 3 weeks, there's been a freeze out because people in Sydney are desperate for a freeze out. And to be fair, they've all come and supported it. So we've changed that into a freeze out. And like during the series, people wanted a bounty, so we put a bounty on. But I think one of the most important aspects, and we're very lucky, is that I've played a lot of poker, and Lauren, my partner, has worked on pretty much every tour you can imagine in the UK and Europe, and has some very close friends that run Unibet and other major tours, that we can bounce ideas and we can introduce new things. So we were like the first room in Australia to introduce Big Blind Ante, because we knew the success it had in Australia. We were also like the first people to bring the turbo flights in for the main event. So like instead of playing a 45-minute clock, you play a 20-minute clock on day one for people who either bus or don't want to play 9-hour day. So we try and bring in these new things because I do think because Sydney doesn't have online poker, they're a tiny bit behind in terms of the standard, if you like. Not in terms of playing, but just in terms of some of the structures and things like that. So we kind of pride ourselves on having the best structures in Sydney, or even Australia. And we introduced a 5K because people wanted to. We have a really good clientele that wanted to play one bigger than a 2.5K. So
it's all those businessmen you were talking about.
Yeah, but we've had a couple of like Hall of Famers come and play it. So Sam Quace plays in our room a lot. Gary Benson's been there. Warwick. So these new customers have come in who obviously want to play bigger, and then it's a really good mix. I mean, for a 5K in any other country, it'd be like 4 businessmen and out of 40 and 36 professionals. But we had a 40-player field, and it was like 6 professionals and 35. I mean, we keep calling them businessmen; they're still very good, but like 35 businessmen.
Yeah.
And it was a huge success. And we also try and give back a lot. So 2 series ago, we ran a tag team event, which we gave away bounties in that event. We gave about 5 or 6K in money, so like a 2.5K seat, 1,100 seat, and a bounty seat, 550, and then a couple of like silly bounties, like a dinner or something. And in the last series, we ran a player of the series, which was the winner got a 20K Rolex, and we put up a minimum of 10K, and then it was 1% from the prize pools. We put 10K of the Rolex cost in ourselves, because we really do want to give back. And I know there's been a lot of chat, and I've spoken to a lot of people about player of the series, and it just coming solely from prize pools or whatever. But we just our option and our opinion is it should be a bit of both. So we put in half the money ourselves. It ended up being like 11K, and then 9K came for the prize pools. And that was also a huge success. It got a lot of people through the door the later end of the weeks. So there is a lot of like giving back, and we do want to make it appealing to come, because obviously we appreciate that we are in Western Sydney, and it is, as you said, it is a bit of a drive, and not everyone in Sydney drives for obvious reasons. But yeah, so it's not the greatest locations, but we're lucky because the Marconi as a club are really, really good to us. They're really supportive of poker. So yeah, I mean, it's such we got like sort of freedom of the world really in what we do.
Yeah, I think that is a big advantage because, there's a lot of red tape around the casinos in Australia when it comes to changing rules. I mean, from the years I've been here, 13 years playing poker, even if you want to change something like Big Blind Ante, it's like they've got to jump through so many hoops from people who have no idea about poker at the top, and they've, got to get approval from the government. It's just ridiculous, the hoops they have to jump through.
So many weird rules, and obviously we were chatting a bit before we came on air just about just how strict they are on certain things on gambling in New South Wales. But yeah.
I've been impressed, but with what has been happening with the WPT up there, just to come back to that, because I want to talk to you about your experience with your tournament there. But yeah, I found that they implemented a few things. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any specific things, but I remember when I was there, I was like, oh wow, they've actually really been able to step it up. I don't know if it's because the lockdown helped them, have time to get things approved or not, but obviously you guys out at the Poker Palace are doing a fantastic job. I hear nothing but good things from everyone who plays out there. I think part of the reason with the people driving out there, that's nothing to do with you guys in any way. It's just like some people just don't like driving or can't drive, as you mentioned. So, no, like well done with all the work you guys are doing out there. Like I've seen it develop. I don't play there much because it's too far for me, but I definitely am consistently hearing good things about it. So well done, man. That's awesome.
I appreciate it. And that's just what you touched on there. One of the biggest benefits is that we have myself, Lauren, and Rod. So it's only 3 of us, so we can bounce ideas off each other. And if we want to do something, we go for it. Like Rod's super supportive. Like if me and Lauren think it's a good idea, he trusts like our knowledge. I'm coming from like a player's point of view, and I'm trying to learn more from her point of view. Obviously, because now my role of being like a TD, I need to learn more from like the back end side of things. But she has all that experience, and then Rod's as a businessman and a player, kind of sees both sides. But it's the best thing about it is it's just 3 of us, so we can bounce ideas off each other. We can speak to our players and get feedback from them, and then we can just run it.
But your decade of experience as a player at some of the biggest stages around the world as well, I think that's one of the big key things that stands out for me because, the saying like it's run by players for players. That's what I would want in terms of people running a game. Like most casinos don't quite have that. They have very experienced, what would you call them? Professional business people, but to be a full-on player for the amount of time that you have and then do what you do, I think that's a huge difference. And the fact that you listen to the players is good too. But hey, we have to move on because I want to talk about WPT. So tell us about your experience in that tournament. I actually was in that tournament and busted out about 80th or so. Now, the table I was on day 2 they were calling it the table of death. So I ended up we had Dan Smeliak, who was the chip leader going into day 2. We had Mike Maddox on our table, Alex Linsky on our table, and a few of the other players who were on the final table eventually. So it was no easy feat for us little folk who didn't win the tournament, but it was impressive to see, and I would have loved to have watched it if they had a stream, but they didn't, to have seen what went on that final table and what your experience was like. So
it was actually really interesting. I had I've had a name blank, but from like 7 tables out, I won a huge flip. I had a name blank who was against as a high stakes reg. I won a huge flip against him, ace king versus jacks. So then I had like 80, 90 big blinds, and I kind of just cruised. Like I had really favourable table draws until there was 2 tables left. I moved to the table with Mike Maddox, KG, who's a very decent Sydney player, Linsky, Luke was on my table as well. So when there was like 2 or 3 tables left, like that would have been the table of death as such. But yeah, the final table was interesting because Mike and Linsky had all the chips. And no disrespect to the others, but I'd say they're probably the best 2 players. I thought were probably the strongest 2 players left.
I mean, Linsky's resume itself would do the would be fearful enough for anyone. But obviously now Mike's had a fantastic year as well.
Linsky's he just picks his spots really well. He's very, very good. And Maddox is just fearless. And I know he has his mindset coaching, and he's just fearless, which is a huge advantage when you're playing for big money deep in those comps. He puts a lot of pressure on. He goes for it a lot, so it's very difficult to judge whether it's just one of those spots he's gone for it or he has it. But as you can see from obviously not the last 6 months because of COVID, but his results in the last year or so of actually playing poker has been really good. But yeah, so it was a weird final table. Like I had a horrible spot against Mike really early where I had to fold top to him, and then I was kind of just no one busted for ages. Like it was just going round and round. We might have played like 2.5 hours. 2 hours before we went from 9 to 8, and I had like 11 big blinds, but I ended up knocking out like 5 players on the final table. I never had like all the chips, but I just like they were shorter than me, and I'd knocked them out. And then we got 3-handed.
So you started the final table quite short in chips, did you?
Yeah, I had like 25 big blinds, I think.
And what was the average?
I think the average was like 40, 35,
okay,
and Mike Aninsky had all the chips. But like, so we started with like 11 left or 10 left, 1 to bust the final table. And I was very conscious that when I made the final table, I wanted a good seat draw against Mike and Linsky. And they were in like the 2 and 3 seat, and I was in the 6 seat, so I had a really good table draw. So like when it got like 7 or 6-handed, I had a really good seat. I raised a lot of cutoffs and buttons and just stole a lot of blinds off people who were essentially trying to ladder or just playing a bit more tighter. But yeah, when we got 3-handed, I was the shortest and they were battling away, and I was just trying to like bide my time and just keep hanging on in there, because I've been in that situation a few times that I know that you just don't give your chips away. That in a 5-minute spell you can go from last to first, like a 3-handed, like the variance is huge, and then the hand that everyone always says, "Oh, you got so lucky." I got ace jack in against Linsky's ace queen, hit a jack, and then that was a huge pot, and then I just never looked back. Like
when you say lucky, I mean most people don't really think that that's still only like a 70-30.
Yeah, and if
that's
it's the other way around,
times,
he was obviously playing very aggressively. I just 3-bet called the big for like 30, and other way around, he would have done the same thing, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then obviously heads up, I had a big chip lead on Mike, and it went pretty well. But yeah, I mean, it was 3-handed, like kind of. Not like I was thinking I'm going to come third, but I was thinking I've done pretty well to like. I mean, I was laddering up. I've had a lot of experience on like big final tables, like, of maneuvering and like chip preservation, which is so important. Like there's spots that were definitely incorrect in what I did, but I just learned that you can make incorrect decisions for like short-term advantage. Like long-term, you probably shouldn't like make these folds or make these jams.
Well, that's the exploitative side.
Yeah, like I ripped 7-3 off in the small blind in one spot when a guy in the big blind had like 12 bigs, and there was another guy 3, and he just showed me an ace and folded kind of thing. Like probably a bit too wide, but I'm like, he's going to fold literally everything. So you kind of just go for it. And then other spots I'd fold way too tight because I was like, I had such a good seat to then pick off blinds. But yeah, I mean, it was just one of those final tables. It took a long time. It was a long final. But yeah, just picking up on what you were going to say, I thought it was really well run. Like I play a lot of poker in the Star in Sydney, and I really like playing poker in the Star in Sydney, but I wouldn't say it's the most efficiently run. Like it's not like if there's a waiting list, it can be a bit of a hassle. Whereas they were short on tables in the Gold Coast, like they just were, because obviously it was a last minute thing and it got huge numbers. And the 2 TDs or the 2 staff were so good at sitting everyone. Like I was number like 300 and something on the alternate list when I registered the main, and they were just so helpful. Like they work so hard to make sure everyone gets seated. Like we had to play 10-handed for a bit. I mean, we had to because it was just so many people, and it was just I thought the same as you. I just thought it was really well run considering the shortness of staff and of like availability of space they had. I thought it was really well run.
So what was you over that tournament for you from start to finish? Like what was the most challenging part?
When I regged, I only had like 18 big blinds or 20 big blinds because I regged last minute as like a PR.
Did you like starting with a disadvantage? Does that help motivate you?
I don't know. No, I don't know actually. I've like done it a couple of times where I've like rebought really late because you still can, and I'm like, well, the comp's still good, I'll rebuy, and then you have like 15 bigs. Not something I would advise generally, but if the tournament's good and the prize pool was huge, so I just kind of had to keep going. I don't know. It was a weird comp. Like I just got really lucky with table draws on day two, and on day two, like I had really good table draws. On the bubble, I had a really good table. And although I still don't play like a huge amount or study as much as I used to, I still have like Cody buried into my DNA of trying to bluff everyone in the bubble, and it kind of went pretty well. And then I won a huge flip, as I said, with like 70 left, and it just like was kind of really smooth sailing from there. I wasn't all in at all until the final table, and just one of those weird comps where like you're playing away and then you just look up and you're suddenly like, oh, there's only 4 tables left. Oh, like it was like 10 tables left, and then suddenly there was 4, and I hadn't really looked up. I was like so focused at that point. Yeah, it was a really good mixture of people playing it, obviously, because it was 1,500 runners, whatever it was. There was a really good mixture of people who satellite in because they ran a lot of satellites in the week, which is another reason why I love main events so much, because you get all these satellite qualifiers in who are like playing a huge buy-in for them, like I think it was 1,500, was it? It's like a huge buy-in for them. They normally play like hundreds, a couple of hundreds, and they play this big buy-in, so it's like a special experience for them. And I kind of like to play on that and like chat to them and stuff, because it's like you want them to play like if it's like their first big comp, but you want them to come back and play again, obviously, because for the poker economy, we want these people to keep playing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And like, not to play
another benefit to being nice to people, right?
Yeah, we don't want them to play beyond their means, but we want them to enjoy themselves. Like, oh, I had such a good time in that main event. I'm definitely going to play the next one, or play satellites the next one. And then obviously there was a mixture of like yourself and all these other like top Australian regulars who never miss a main event. So it was like a really good mixture. And yeah, it was just really well organized and run as well, like considering it was just so busy.
I noticed you had like quite a huge support network around you, and it's probably because it looked like to be a lot of Sydney crew. You've clearly established a name for yourself in the community as a tournament director, a player, an all-round nice guy, I would say. And so, did you find it like a lot of pressure having them there? Because I'm sure the other players would have had support networks there as well. Yeah,
so Heads Up actually was really actually worked out really well, because Mike's obviously a really nice guy and he was super popular. So he had like the Queensland crew on one corner, and we had like the Sydney crew on another corner. But it was tricky because obviously myself and Lauren, who was there, my partner, watching me, like for PR, we had for political reasons, we can't be like too aggressive because we like these Queenslanders and we want them to come and play in our room, and like some of them do come and play in our room, so we're very.
But
friendly
I think everyone knows it's a friendly band.
But it was
anyway,
actually the noise when the all in call for the final hand was like deafeningly loud. I didn't feel any pressure. I just I quite enjoyed it. I just go and talk to them when there was long hands, and I've never really felt pressure playing a big final table, which is odd because I know a lot of people get like anxious playing for big money. But I just enjoy it. Like I'm like, this is fun. Like it doesn't happen. Like I think you have to enjoy it. Like a friend of mine, Kiev actually won the APL in Sydney a couple of years ago. He was playing another event. He said, "Oh, just enjoy it, but make sure you play well." He said, "Like this doesn't come around every day. Just like concentrate." And I was like, "Yeah." It's like he's spot on. Like you have to enjoy it, but as he says, he doesn't come around every week, so you have to concentrate and make sure you're happy with how you played. But yeah, enjoying it.
So he said that to you, like
he said enjoy
or
it. No,
before?
Just before the final table started, he said enjoy it, but make sure you. He said he just doesn't come around all the time. Make sure you win and play well. And I said, yeah, he's like spot on. Like you just sometimes those little things like turn you back on. You're like right, focus.
It's so simple but so deep. Hey, it's so profound. Like the meaning that it can provide and the clarity of peace of mind and perspective when you're on such a big stage, you know, because I think that this was your biggest score that you've ever had, right? Or you had one sort of
had like a 120 in the UK, which is, I don't know what the conversion was at the time, but it would be very similar.
Yeah. So like the potential opportunity, I mean, I won't say it's once in a lifetime for someone who plays a lot, but it's probably once every couple of years sort of opportunity. If that, for most people, it is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
And I think people overlook that. So like a lot of people, like I probably had far less deep runs than a lot of people that played for a living. But this is probably a variance thing. But when I have had a deep run, like a lot of the study I've done in my time and a lot of the live reads that I pick up are far more validated at big final tables because people give off more information because they are a bit more anxious. And I've just studied a lot of like final table scenarios and spoken to a lot of people about various stuff. So like I try and make it count. And most of the times I've ran deep in big comps, I've had really good positions. I've had like a couple, like obviously wins, but then like seconds and thirds. Whereas a lot of people who have top 20 finishes, are just like no fault of their own. I'll just give a perfect example. So KG is sort of in the last year or two, plays in Sydney. He's had so many like deep runs, so many, but never had that, like not had that huge first, second or third. And it's like, by no means is it because I'm better than him, because that's just not true. But it's just the variance and just he's got there way more often than me. But the one time I've got there, it's just obviously luck as well. It's just paid off, and then that kind of is the difference between not that he's struggling, but struggling like when you are playing for a living, and just like having a big profiting year. It's just that day three or that final table.
It is right.
Ninth
like,
or third.
I totally understand what you're saying, and it's one of the hardest things to grasp if you're not if you don't have like millions and millions of tournaments under your belt from playing lots online or something like that, because you don't realize the significance in and how important that is. And yes, there's a lot of luck in it, as you're saying, but you can't. What I found is that you can't think with that mentality of, well, that's why I'm not doing well because of luck. Because as soon as you start blaming, oh, well, yeah, I lost a flip. I keep losing flips in high equity situations. I've heard a lot of my professional friends saying that over the years, and it's like, you can't think like that, I think, because that develops like the victim mentality of, well, yeah, that other professional player who plays full time just as much as I do, although I work harder than him, but I'm not as lucky as him. I think that creates a pretty unhealthy mindset, I would say. Yeah.
Like, I think like I haven't been huge on mindset. I think I was lucky that my mindset was quite strong, and obviously I just took advice from older guys that have been in the game a long time. But mindset's so crucial because, as you said there, like I always tell people when because they sort of not that they admire that I just don't care, but like I just bust a comp and I bust a comp. But like they bust a comp and are very emotional. They're like, oh, like how do you not care, kind of thing. But they'll focus on the hand they busted on, and a lot of the time the hands you bust on are completely like irrelevant. Like you're going to lose a flip, you've lost a flip. It would happen 99 times out of 100. The things they don't look at are where they've lost like 2 or 3 big blinds in spots they shouldn't have done, or they could have won more or lost less. And those, like when people are studying and learning or reviewing, I tell people to write down hands all the time, and they'll be like, I could write down like 30, 40 hands from a tournament. Like you're better off writing down more than less. Like even if it's totally irrelevant and someone said, no, it's just a completely standard situation, like you don't need to go through that. But you want to write it because they're like, oh, maybe you should have bet this, or maybe you could have folded this spot. And they just think, oh, I've lost another flip. And like I hear a lot as well, obviously working in the room, like oh, I keep making final tables, and if you keep making final tables, you're doing something right. But it's just you need to stop looking at the hands you bust out in, like the ace, like a lot of the time by the final table, you've got 20, 30 bigs, you've got ace king. There's not really any other answer apart from to get your money in. And if you run into something better or lose the flip, like it just happens. It's inevitable.
It's part of the game, yeah.
But there's a spot where if you have 20 bigs and they have 20 bigs and you've actually bet 3 big blinds, you should have bet 7, you would have had 4 big blinds more and you'd still be in the tournament. And that's like trying to tell people, like, you have to, if you literally have to maximize how many chips you have when the inevitability comes. Like, you're going to pick up these callers, which is where people will win and lose money. You have to make sure you maximize your stack in that situation so that you have them covered, or there's literally nothing else you could have done, kind of thing.
So you think that the details here really matter because it's about really making sure you're capitalizing on those little situations where you're stealing blinds, you're minimizing your bet sizes when you're bluffing so you can save money if it doesn't work, or you're maximizing your value bets, all those things. They're the nitty gritty details that
that's what I've always focused on. Like calling a 3 big blind bet on the river when you probably shouldn't is like huge. If you're like in progress, you've lost 3, like they think, oh, it's only 3 big blinds. I like, oh well, that kind of thing doesn't mean next hand, but like it can be huge in the when you then double up, you've got 3 big blinds less than you should have. And then it like progresses. And I've always looked at it that way. And I've never really looked at, oh, I've lost another flip or my ace has got cracked. Like, because that's inevitable. They're going to happen. The percentages says so. Like, that's going to happen. So you need to look at, like, and maximize your stack for when those inevitable situations. That's what I think. I think that's always helped my mentality because I've just written lots of hands down and I'll be like, oh, like I missed that spot up, and then I don't think, oh, the bust out hand, could I have folded? Or like, mostly, sometimes obviously you bluff it off, sometimes you do. And sometimes you make a hero call that's wrong, and then you can analyze that. But most of the time when you bust deep in a tournament, it's just going to be like hand versus hand and inevitability. Like, there's nothing you can do. So you should just not think about it. Just move on and think where you made mistakes.
Whenever people ask me, like, you know, they text me or something, say, hey, Brendan, I want to know what you thought about this. I just busted out of this tournament. And they text me the hand. Like, quite often the first thing I'll say is, would you be telling me about this if you won the hand? Mm-hmm. And the answer is usually, no. Okay, well then it's a good chance you probably didn't do anything wrong, and there was probably 10 other things you did wrong in the lead up to that. So what else could you have done better, right? So I could not agree with you more. I think what you're talking about deserves a lot more wisdom than you know it should, because it is in the details there, and people, because of the emotion that's attached to busting out of a tournament. You know, you mentioned before, like when you're in a tournament, it's like, you know, it's like you're just in the tournament and there's nothing else matters. The world's out there. But when you get out of it, it's like there is this break. There's this emotional detachment that happens that hurts, and then people think that's the problem. But people put far too much emphasis on that and not enough emphasis on the little details.
But I think it also links to being emotionally involved, because if you're emotionally involved, the last thing you remember is the last hand you played. Whereas in reality, there's like, and then you just become not obsessed by it, you just think it over and over, but you're thinking over something that you can't, like you did nothing wrong and you can't change. Like if it's just a standard flip, you really should be thinking about, like, did I do enough up to that point? Was my stack as optimal as it could be up to that point? Did I make any mistakes up to that point? Not the point where you actually busted, which I still get those texts and I'll be like, I'd lost a flip, GG kind of thing. Like, I wouldn't go into details like, whatever, I lost a flip. But some people get too attached, as you say, like, and that's definitely a mentality. But I think it's also like people who are emotionally involved think that way. Like they'll bust with, like, say, jacks is always like, oh, I busted with jacks again. Like, it's like, well, you're going to bust with jacks a lot. They're a very good hand. You're going to put your money in, so you're going to bust with that hand a lot. Like, and people,
and often people make bad changes to their game based on that too, because then next time they get pocket jacks, they think, oh, I'm not busting out with jacks again. It's like, no, that's like the worst way you could think of it, because now it's going to hold you back from making the correct decision. So, but look, man, I'd love to wrap things up here, because it's been awesome having you on here, but we've hit well over the 1 hour limit, which is awesome, because I know I could talk for another 10 hours. But last thing I want to ask you is, would you ever consider coaching?
I've considered it lots of times. I'm just not particularly good with the solvers. So if I did it, it would be from like a live aspect. People have approached me about it, and my partner thinks I should do it, so I probably will do eventually. I'm just a bit lazy.
Bit lazy?
Yeah,
do you
I need to be more proactive
that
about
it's
it.
different? Like, because to be able to play and coach are very different skills. Like, you know, is that something that might be holding you back? Or?
I coached football when I was younger, or soccer when I was younger. Like I talk a lot to people, like, and a lot of people in the room ask me questions and stuff, and I'm always happy to answer. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I probably should do now. I have a bit more time that I don't play it, like, for a living. I probably could or should do it. But I more just like chat to people and they send me hands and I'll just reply to them like that way. But
You're a natural, man. I mean, the stuff you shared here today and the way you describe things and articulate things, you've got it in you. That's why I asked.
I needed that kick. I might have to start now that you said it.
I get a kickback, though, of all your clients for promoting you, right?
I'll try and steal some of yours. They're good clients.
All right, man. Well, thanks heaps for coming here. It's awesome.
No,
and I know people really would have gotten a lot from that. So
I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Good luck with everything. And hopefully I'll get off my lazy ass and come out for a Poker Palace tournament.
We've got the series coming up. I expect to see you at least once.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.